Hello there, this is Carolyn Whitaker, and today I'm going to show you how I retouch or edit some of my images in Photoshop. And now let me qualify that by saying this. I'm going to show you a heavily retouched image, but I don't always do this to every single image that I sell. So I want you to know that some of the things I'm going to do today, I'm going to do them probably more than I normally would unless I was going to paint it. So just bear that in mind that I don't do this to every single image that I'm going to show you today. And let me tell you the tools I'm using. First of all, the software is Adobe Photoshop, and with Photoshop comes Bridge and also Camera Raw. And I'm going to show you all three of those things today, not in great detail, but at some point, if you do want to learn how to use Bridge and use Raw a little more, if you'll let me know, I'd be happy to do a longer tutorial on those. Also, I'm using a Wacom tablet with a stylus, and if you don't have one, I highly recommend that you invest in a Wacom tablet. It just you can just do incredible things with it, and I don't know that I could retouch or do anything without it, so I highly recommend a Wacom tablet. At the end of this video, there will be a link to a place where you can purchase a Wacom tablet, and I will tell you that there are some affiliate links, and we do that because we don't charge for our tutorials, but if you do use our links, it will help us to be able to continue to do free tutorials for you. So we would appreciate that if you would consider it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open Bridge. So I'm going to drop File down, and I'm going to say Browse in Bridge. And actually, I already have loaded the images that I want to show you today. This is from a file that we did a couple of years ago, 3 little girls. We photographed them together and separately, and you can just see that there's tons of images that we did. We did photograph them both in RAW and JPEG, and we do that so that in case we do need to show the mom an image very quickly, we can do that without having to convert all of the RAW images. But today I have a folder here. Well, just for fun, let me show you real quickly. These are the 4 paintings that the mom bought. I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it a little better. These are the 4 paintings that the mom bought, and I did paintings in all of those. And if you guys are interested in learning how to paint, then maybe one of these days I can do a tutorial on that. Just let me know. And then these are the retouched images that I did recently for an album for her. And as you can see, they're retouched and ready to be put into a book, which I've already ordered. And I ordered that book from InPhoto, which is also one of our highly recommended companies. And then these are the images that we're going to use today to show you how to retouch. And so let's pretend I had those 80 images here or something. This is how I would do it. I would click on the one with the gray card, and I'll also have a link for a gray card if you're interested in a gray card. Oops, sorry, let me move that back. Click on the gray card, and then I'm going to hit Shift and click on the other 4. And I can go up here and say File, Open in Camera Raw, or I can right click and do the same thing, Open in Camera Raw. And so those 4 images are now going to open in Camera Raw. These are the raw images, not the JPEGs. And I don't really recommend you do this with with JPEG images. It's really for raw images. Now, the cool thing about this is, let me do this. I'm going to clear the crops. Let me clear the crop on all of them. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to clear the crops on these and show you. Okay, they're all cleared. So here's the image. The other thing I want to do is I want to set it back to, because I've already transferred these, I'm going to set it back to as shot. Okay, so this is how it came out of the camera. And as you can see, they're a little bit different color. Each one's just a little bit different color because they're straight out of the camera. So, but what I want to do is I want to set the white balance for all 4. So I'm going to click on the image with the gray card. I'm going to hit my Shift again. I'm going to click on the bottom image, and now you can see on the left that all of the images are selected. So then I'm going to go in with the eyedropper, which is right up here. As you can see, it says white balance. This one says color sample tool. I don't want that. I want the white balance tool. So I'm going to select that. And then I can click on this gray card. And there's actually 3 spots you can click. Click the gray, the black, or the white. So I'm going to click on the gray and see what that does. That is a little bit pinker than I would like. Let me try the black and see what it does. Oops. It's a little better. Let's try the white. Okay, it actually says it's too bright, so I can't even use that. So let me go back to the black area and see what that looks like. Okay, I like that pretty well. Now, as you can see over here are my controls, and I've got a temperature, a tint, and all these other controls. If I take the temperature up, it's going to get a little more yellow. So let's say I took it up to 5600. And to me, that is way too yellow. And the other thing I would recommend is that you look at where this is set before you move it, so that if you want to put it back to where it was, you can do that really easily. But I think it was at 4400. Let's try that. I like that pretty well. Then if I want to take some of the yellow out, I can move this. Right now it's set at +8. I can move it up. There's a +10, not too bad. There's a +14, which I do think is a little too pink. So let me take it back to that +8. I like that pretty well. Now the other thing I can take the clarity up to make it, to just sharpen it just a little bit. So I'm going to take that up about 20% or 20 ticks. And then I can also take up the vibrance. And it's set at about 28 right now. I like that pretty well. And then I can also, if I want to mess with the dehaze, and sometimes this is a really good thing to do. I'm not sure it's going to work on this image, but it just brings the blacks out and that kind of thing. I think I'm going to leave it where it was at 0 this time. Okay, so as you can see, as I'm adjusting this image with the white card, all of these other images adjusted along with it. So as I go down, every single one of them now is the same color because I adjusted them all with that gray card. I hope this makes sense to you, but because I had them all selected, everything I do to this image translate to this other image, these other images. So I'm going to hit the shift again so I can select them all, and I'm going to show you the crop tool. So here I go with the crop tool, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to crop the image. And right now the crop, if I pull it down, it's set to constrain to image, but I want it to be, oops, no, I want it to be a 4x5. I want it to be like an 8x10 crop. So I'm going to set it to 4x5. And I'm going to make the crop pretty big, and I'm also going to put it pretty well in the center. And then I'm going to go in and adjust each image accordingly. Now, I want to show you another little trick that you can do, especially for previews. I don't necessarily do this for retouching images, but for previews, you can go into this effects button, and you can pull up the vignetting and vignette the edges, and see what that does to the edges of these images. It just gives it a nice vignette. Now, I don't want to do that while I'm retouching because I'm going to actually vignette when I get into Photoshop. So I'm going to take that back off. I'm going to put that back to 0 because right now I don't want to do that. I don't want to vignette. Oh, by the way, you can go the other direction and make a white edge, but I'm not going to do either of those right now. So let me get that back to 0. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go into each image and I'm going to look at that crop. Of course, that's not going to work. I'm still on the crop tool, and I can move this down to where I want it to be. I can make it smaller. I can make it larger. I can do whatever I want to it. I can even tilt it if I want to. So there's just tons of things that you can do even to each image after you've done this in Bridge. So for this particular image, I'm going to call that crop pretty good. Okay, so now let's look at this one. A little too much headroom for me. I'm going to take it down just a little bit. I'm going to move her a little more to the center, actually a little bit off to the right since she's looking right. Looking left. And then the same thing with this one. I'm going to make that crop a little bit bigger, as full as I can get it. I'm going to, now, as you can see here, this particular crop, this 4x5 crop, is actually cutting off part of her dress, and I really want to include the dress. So I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to put this on normal, and watch what happens. I can actually change this crop and drag it down and get the entire dress. I'm going to cut out that one little spot down there. And so now my crop is different. So today I want to look at these and figure out which one of these that I actually want to do the retouching on. This one's a full length, and I don't feel like I can show you as much on it I want to concentrate a little more on her face and what we're going to do there. And one of the reasons I picked this little girl, she's a beautiful little girl, but she does have some dark circles under her eyes. And so I wanted to show you how I can take care of some of those. I think I'm going to go with this one. Okay. So I have everything fixed. I have everything retouched on it. Let me go back to the basic settings. And let me show you one thing. If I wanted to, I could bring it up a little bit, a little lighter, or I could take it a little darker. But I actually like it about where I had it, which is about 0.45 under. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to say Open Image. And now this image is going to pop open in Photoshop. Now, if I wanted to adjust those images and I didn't want to change them, I could have said Cancel. Or if I wanted to change them but I didn't want to open them, I would have said Done. So this image right now is opening up in Photoshop. And once we get it open, we'll get started with it. I'm going to show you several tools today. One of my very favorites that I love is called the History Brush. And actually, my friend Suzette Allen is the first one that introduced me to that. And I played with that a lot over the years since she told me about it. And I absolutely love using it. Okay, so we have our image here of the little girl. She's finally open. And what I've done is I've gone in and I've created a background copy. Let me throw this away and just show you how I did that. Okay, so this is the original image. And we don't want to work on this layer right here, because if we do that, then we'll have to backtrack a lot. So what I want to do is I want to create another layer. So I drag it down to this box next to the trash can. I've created another layer that I can actually work on. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is assess this image, and as I look at it, she has some really dark circles under her eyes, and that needs to be addressed and taken care of. Her mama does not want to see those dark circles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to figure out what I want to use to take care of those. There's a lot of things I can do. I can use the spot healing brush. I can use the patch tool. I can go in and I can actually use the dodge tool. I can use the stamp tool, the clone stamp tool. There's just all kinds of things I can do. But for me, I usually start with the patch tool. And what it does is you just circle the area that you want to change. And as you can see, there's what they call the marching answer around it. And just pull it down to an area of her skin that is clear. And that takes care of some of it. Once again, I'm going to do the same thing here. Pull it down to an area of skin that looks better. Now that already looks better. It's not perfect, but it looks better. The one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to get into this little line, and I don't want to get her eyelashes. So I have to be really careful when I circle this with my stylus that I don't get into that little line or those eyelashes. And so I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to pull it down to an area of her skin that looks a little bit better, a little bit nicer. Still a little bit dark up in there. And so at this point, that's looking pretty good. Now let me go up here. I have a little spot here. I can do the same thing. I can circle it and drag it down, and as you can see, it's gone. Now let me show you the spot healing tool. I can do the same thing. I can just draw a little spot over that, and it takes care of that little spot. But as you can see, it still looks kind of red, so I might want to go back in with the patch tool and just take that little bit of redness out. And that looks pretty clean. Now, there's some other little things. There's a little spot right there that I want to take care of. A couple of little dark spots right there. There's a little bitty tiny something on her nose right there. And I always look in the nose to make sure that there's not something there that needs to be cleaned up, that the mom missed with a Kleenex or whatever. So now that's looking pretty good. Oh, I also see this spot right here. I don't mind this spot, but I don't like these. They're just too bright. So I want to take those and get rid of those if I can. Drag it up here. Looks a little better. It's got a little dark on me, so I'll just kind of keep circling that until I get it where I want it. Okay, that's looking better. Okay, one little spot there. Okay, now I want to show you. I want to show you what you can if you're not careful with that tool, what you can do to harm it. Okay. So if I were to miss and circle the wrong thing and drag it over, you can see that's a mess, right? It just looks horrible. So what I can do is I can actually say edit, undo, edit, undo, and her nose is back. And so you want to be really careful when you do that you don't get an area that you shouldn't get. If you do happen to get an area and you know that you shouldn't have it, like I know that's not going to work, all you need to do is click off of it and it'll go away. Okay? So that's kind of the patch tool. I'm going to clean that little spot up right there and that little spot right there. Okay, so now her eyes look better, but they're still a little bit dark. So once again, I can do quite a few things. I can go in here with the dodge tool. I can go in with something else with the clone stamp tool. I can do all kinds of different things. But I'm going to show you one of my very favorite tools, and it is called the History Brush. And as I told you before, Suzette Allen is the one that kind of introduced me to this, and I played with it a lot since she introduced me. So the first thing I'm going to do, once again, I'm going to make another background copy because I've already retouched her eyes on that background copy. And let me turn that off for a second. These little eyeballs turn it on and off. As you can see, the original image is still underneath, and this is the image. This is the background where I actually did the retouching, and you can turn them on and off and see what you've done. Okay. So let me turn this one back on. I haven't done anything on this layer yet, but I want to create a new layer so that I can get started. Now, this is the history palette. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a snapshot of this image, of this layer, okay? So I'm going to push this little camera, and if I scroll up, there's the snapshot I just took. So I want to place my history brush tool. Maybe. Let's try it. Come on. Okay. I want to place my history brush tool inside that little square next to snapshot 1. I'm going to go over and get my history brush, and it's the brush with the little arrow, and I'm going to set my mode to screen. Screen actually means to make lighter. Right now I have my opacity set to 42%. Now the cool thing about the history brush is that when I work on the image, all it is actually lightening the pixels that are there without destroying them. So let's say I wanted to lighten the tip of her nose a little bit. Oh my goodness, look at there. I've got her nose really bright, right? It's too much. So what I can do is I can actually go away up here where I've worked on the history brush, and I can begin to throw away some of these little history brush actions, or whatever you want to call it. I can just start throwing them away until I get it to where I want it. And so now I'm down to the very first one that I've created. I'm still in snapshot 1. Let's say that I did this. Oh, and that looks terrible. So what I can do is once again, I can just throw away that one spot. Now let's say I make her nose brighter and I like that, but then I go up here and I do this, but I don't like that. Well, I can throw this one away, but yet keep the one that I made with her nose. So that's what I'm saying. You can, as you do this, you can throw away the little sections that if you don't like them, if you make a mistake. So with this history brush, I'm going to do a couple of different things. First of all, I'm going to enhance the highlights in her hair. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to enhance those highlights. And let's say that you think, well, I like that, but it's too strong. You can actually take the opacity down so that you're just barely lightening them, and you can build up your highlights. You can take it up stronger so you don't have to build it up as much, but you just do it however you want to. You can take your opacity up or down any way you want to. Now, I usually try to stay, when I'm doing this, especially on hair, I try to keep the highlights, just brighten up the ones that are already there. Like, I don't want to go into this really dark area and make a highlight. I just want to brighten up the highlights that she already has. Now right here, there's a little highlight right here. There's one right here. There's a few up in here and here and here. And I'm just going to brighten up those highlights in her hair so that it just looks really, really, really pretty. Now, the other thing that I could do if I wanted to, especially if I'm going to use this history brush for a lot of different things, is I could actually go in and name this history layer. I could call this history hair. Let me just show you. So I double click that, and all I do is just type in, well, sorry, try that again. Type in history hair. So what that means is that if I decide for some reason that I don't like this, I can actually throw that layer completely away. I can throw this history hair layer away. So let me get all these little highlights in, and then I'll show you what we've actually done. Okay, so I've got my hair highlighted. If I turn it off, you can see the difference. Now, this is the other thing. If you think you've gotten it too bright, but you don't want to throw away all those history brush layers, you can also drop the opacity of the layer a little bit. Maybe you want to take it to 74% or 75%, or maybe you want to take it to 50%. You just think it's way too bright. You can drop that history layer down. For this tutorial, I'm going to leave it up high because I want you to be able to see all the changes that we've made. Okay, so now I'm going to make another layer because now I'm going to work on the highlights on her face. But what you'll notice is my history brush is still in snapshot 1, but it will no longer work. Do you see that little circle? See that little circle with the dash in it? That means that it will not work because I've made a new layer here. I also have to make a new layer here. So I'm going to click this little camera again. I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to put my history brush inside next to snapshot 2. Snapshot 2 is also along with this new history hair copy layer. Now, I'm going to rename this one Face History. History Face. Now, I'm going to tell you right here and now that I don't rename my layers. I know I should, but I get really lazy and I don't. So I just want you to know that I don't do that. Now, this is the cool thing about eyes. I always like to add this little highlight over here, this little highlight next to the catch light. You can go in with the history brush, and when you do this, it doesn't destroy the color of the eye. All it does is brighten it up with your history brush. It just brightens it up. So there's a highlight in that eye. Here's a highlight in this eye. And you can just make those highlights look really, really pretty, and just really strong. And so I can lighten it up quite a bit. Now, the other thing I can do is I can brighten up this catch light. And then the other thing I can do is I can also brighten up the whites of her eyes a little. Now, I don't want to get too close up here because that's a natural shadow from her eyelid. So I don't want to get too close to the eyelid up on the top. But I do want to brighten these up next to her. Okay? So now you can see, if I turn that off, you can see her eyes have been enhanced. Okay? Now then I'm going to do, I think we did her nose a little bit before, but I'm going to do it again, just a touch, just to give it a little bit of shine. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and give her lip a little bit of a shine. Not very much, just a little. Okay? So now we have that. If you'll notice, there's a little tiny shine above her lip, a tiny little shine. I can enhance that a little. I can also enhance this little shine around her nose if I want. Not very much, just a little bit. And then I can also, if I want to, give her a little shine on her chin. And a little shine right there and there. She already has it. All I'm doing is enhancing it. Now then, you'll remember we worked on her eyes a while ago, and it's still a little dark under there. So let me show you what I can do. I can actually take this history brush and very, 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 very lightly go under there and brighten up underneath those eyes. Just a little bit. I don't want to go crazy with it because I don't want it to look like we have on white makeup, but I can lighten them up just the slightest bit. And I do this a lot when I'm painting. I lighten up that underneath the eye area. Now the other place I want to do a highlight is I want to do it right above her eyelid. So I'm going to just take the history brush, and brighten that up a little bit, especially on this side. I'm not sure. I think this little girl may have cried a little bit right before the session, so her eyelids are a little bit red anyway. So now then, look at the difference in her face. You can see the little bit of shine on her lips. You can see the little bit of shine underneath her eyes. You can see a little bit on her nose and a little bit on her eyelids and her eyes. And it just absolutely brightens her up. Now, while we're doing the face, there's something else that I want to show you. We have added highlights to her face and to her hair. Now we're going to go in and we're going to choose the multiply mode. So if you'll go in and choose multiply mode, now we can go in and we can do something really cool. Multiply is actually going to darken. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually darken this little area right around her eye, just to give it a nice definition. We're going to darken her pupil with the multiply. We're going to just lightly darken that shadow right underneath her eyelid. Once again, we're going to darken on this side, darken that shadow. Now, we've gotten that. Now, watch this. This is the coolest thing. And I'm going to actually take this up to, I've got it at 56. Watch her eyelashes. We can actually lengthen and darken those eyelashes with this history brush. And I just think that's the coolest thing. And you have to remember with eyelashes, eyelashes aren't perfectly straight. They go in all different directions. So you want to make sure that you don't just give her all these straight eyelashes. You want them to go in different directions like eyelashes do. And I can do the same thing with the lower lashes. I can make them just a little bit darker, give them a little bit more definition, just like that. The other thing that I can do is this little shadow right along her lower lid. I can also darken that just a little bit. So let's do the other eyelid. Now these eyelashes are pointing down more, so I want to do that, but I also want to give her just a few that are pointing up as well on this side. They don't have to be real dark, but just a few. Just give her a few just to darken them. And then these lower lashes as well. I'm going to darken those. And then once again, this little area right along here and right along there. So if you look at her eyes, let's look at her eyes especially. You can see the difference. For me, they just come alive. Okay, so we've done her face. So now let's make another layer. Okay, so we're going to make another layer by dragging this down once again. And I'm going to call this one clothing, history clothing. As you can see, this history brush is incredible. It does so many things, and you can create so many things with it. And the cool thing is, if you don't like what you've done, you can go back and throw them away. Now, remember what I told you before? You can see I'm still on the history brush, but see I have that little circle with the line through it? I once again have to hit the camera, this little camera right here, to make a new snapshot and go in and put my brush right next to the snapshot. And as I'm also on multiply, I always like to start with screen. I'm not sure why, but I always like to start with screen and do my highlights first. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into her clothing and I'm going to enhance the highlights in her clothing. Now you remember I told you before, I don't do this on every single image. I really don't. But I do that especially on paintings, and sometimes if I just really want to add a little pop to something, especially for maybe images for the album, I might go in and do this. So as you can see, this history brush just does amazing things even for clothing. And the cool thing is these images, when you add these highlights and you enhance the highlights, some people think they're a painting even though they haven't been painted. So you're just going to go in and you're going to add these highlights with the history brush. And like I said before, you really just want to follow the highlights that are already there. You don't necessarily want to create new ones. You just want to follow the ones that you already see. Like there's a big one right here on this bow. There's some up here on her ribbon. There's even some in the flowers. You can even make that flower look amazing by increasing the highlights on it. There's some right here and right here. And so you can just grab the highlights that you see. You could even, and I'm probably not going to do this, but I'm going to show you that you could do in just one second. Okay, I like that pretty well. It's got most of them. Might be one there. Got most of those highlights pulled out. I could, especially if I were doing a painting, I could even go in on her fingers. Could even go in on her fingers and even increase the highlights on her fingers just to give it more definition. Now, I'm not going to do that here. I don't think I need it. I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to actually throw that history brush away. I'm going to throw this one away. I'm going to throw that one away. This one away. Until I get rid of all of those highlights. Okay. All right, I've got to go back up here at my history brush and put this back in. Okay, so now I'm going to once again change this to multiply. And this is what I'm going to do on the dress. I'm actually going to go into the areas, as you can see, that have the shadows. And I'm going to increase those shadows. And it's going to make those highlights pop even more than they already do by increasing those shadows. And I might have it set just a little higher, too high. I'm going to take it down a little bit because I feel like I feel like it's getting a little bit too dark. So I'm going to set it maybe at, let's do 38 and see what that looks like and see how that's going to work. But I can go in and I can increase those highlights. I'm going to make my brush a little bigger. And it's going to make those highlights pop even more. As you can see, this is what happens. Because when there is a highlight, there's also a shadow. And you need to take that into consideration. And you don't always have to do the low lights, but I like to. I think it looks really nice, and I like to do it. So I'm just going to bring those low lights in. Up here on the bow, right here. And even in the flower, we're just going to increase those low lights. Okay. So let's look at the image before we did that. That's what it looked like before. This is what it looks like now. Once again, if you wanted to, if it's too much, you can drop the opacity just so that it's a little bit. But I'm going to bring mine up. Once again, I want to exaggerate it so that you can see. Now let me show you something else that you can do with the multiply brush. I'm not going to do this here. I'm actually going to throw this away. I'm going to create a new layer so I can easily get rid of it. But if I wanted to, I have to make another snapshot. Sorry. There we go. If I wanted to, I could actually go in and I could use my multiply brush and actually darken the background with my history brush. I could even do that this way. I'm not going to do that this time because I want to do it a different way. I want to show you a different way that I could do it, but I could do that if I wanted to. I could also, if I, let me throw this away. Try that again. I'm going to go make another snapshot, go back up here and put it in there. If I wanted to, I could just deepen and darken those flowers in there. I can do it selectively so that all I do is just get the pinks of those flowers darkened and not necessarily, maybe this pot back here, if I wanted to do it, I could do it and just do certain details, which would work really well. Okay, so now I want to show you something else. I feel like she's a little pale, so if I wanted to add some color to her cheek, all I would do is create an empty layer. Now, you remember to create a layer, we drag this down to the second box. But if I want to create an empty layer, all I do is touch it. And as you can see here, this is a layer, but it's an empty layer. It doesn't have anything on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample the color of her lip. And as you can see, the color pops up right there. If that's not the color I like, I can continue to do it until I get the one I like. But let's say I sample the color of her lip. Here it is. And I want to open it up, and I open it up by touching it. Now, I want a color that's lighter and brighter than this one. So all I'm going to do is just come up here and pick a lighter, brighter color. It's still in the same color family, but it's lighter and it's brighter. So I'm going to say, okay. Now I want to go in and get a brush. I want a soft brush. Let's make sure I have a soft, round brush, okay? And I do. Then I want to go up here to Window, Brush Settings, and I want to make sure that Shape Dynamics is pressed and that Setting is off. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to be able to paint without having to put a lot of pressure in there. Now I'm going to enlarge the brush. I'm going to take this down to the opacity down to maybe 50%. And I'm just going to brush some color onto her cheek. That's pretty bright, isn't it? Looks pretty bright, pretty bright. But let me show you what happens. Now that I have this color on her cheek, I'm going to drop the normal mode or the layer from normal. I'm going to take it to soft light. And as you can see, this cheek already looks great. If I turn that off, you can see the difference. But this cheek over here is really dark. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to take the eraser, which is, let me find it. There's the eraser tool. I'm going to drop the opacity. The opacity is at 11%. And I'm just going to very lightly, and once again, I want to make sure that that brush settings on that is set to Shape Dynamics and off, okay? And then I'm just going to take and very lightly go over that area, very lightly, so that it more matches the other cheek, which to me now it does. And so now I have color on those little cheeks. You see that? There's just a slight bit of color. But I always change this to either overlay or soft light, and for me, soft light usually works the best. So now she has a beautiful little rosy cheek. Looks really pretty. Now then, the next thing that I want to do, I'm going to actually drop this layer. So to drop the layer, you can either go to Layers, Layers, Merge Down, or you can press Control E, which is just what I'm going to do. Control E takes that layer with the pink cheeks and puts it on this one. So if I turn this layer off, you can see the cheeks go away, and also the highlights in the dress go away. If I turn, no, the background goes away if I turn it off. Okay, where I enhance the background. Okay, so now we're looking pretty good. So now what I want to do is I want to actually take you into a plugin that I use, which is called Topaz Filters, and I absolutely love it. Topaz Filters, Topaz Labs, I'm going to go into Studio, has a ton of things that come with it. There's clarity, there's detail, there's glow, there's impressions, simplify, texture effects, and Topaz Studio. And the cool thing is, if you have an image that's slightly out of focus or there's been some camera shake, you can take it into clarity and you can do a lot of things with it. You can do the detail, and the detail will bring up like a HDR effect and things like that. This plugin is amazing. And also, we are an affiliate for them. If you're interested in Topaz Labs, I would really appreciate if you would go through our link. It won't cost you any more, but it would help us out a lot. So let's go into Topaz Studio, and I'm going to show you what's going to come up here. This little image is going to be pulled up inside Topaz Studio. And I'm going to actually use Topaz Studio to enhance the color of this image. I'm going to use it to do a vignette, and I'm also going to use it to do some soft focus. When Kevin and I were photographing with film, we used the RB 150 millimeter soft focus lens almost completely all the time. And it provided a beautiful softness. But we no longer use that camera because we don't use film anymore. So we now soften in Photoshop. So I'm going to show you exactly how that happens and how I do that. So hang on just a second as it's opening up. Okay, so it will actually give you some direction when you pull it up. It'll kind of show you some different things that you can do to adjust your image, and so I highly recommend you watch those. So let's say that I want to give it a little color pop. Well, I don't like that. I don't like color blast. No, don't like that. Don't love that. Don't love that. We're getting a little closer here and there. Let's see. Let's look at Classic Collection and see what we have here. There's Brilliant Gold. I actually kind of like that. Brilliant Warm's a little too warm. Don't want any of the cool tones, I know. Don't love that. Not that I don't love them. I don't love them for this image. So let's go back up to this Brilliant Gold and let's click on it. Okay? So what it's done is it's actually enhanced the gold in the background. It's enhanced the gold in her hair. And even her dress is a little pinker. Now if I want to, I can actually do this and I can look at the difference between the two images. Okay? So you can see the difference between the two images. I love what it's done to her dress. I love the little bit pinker area, and I don't even mind her skin too much, but I don't love this gold color it's added in the background. So I'm going to click that back, and what I'm going to do is this. I can go in with local adjustments, okay, and I can choose eraser, and I can make the eraser maybe 47%, and I can brush out, use brush out. My hardness is not very much. Edge aware is at 50%. So I'm just going to paint over these clouds and show you that if I want to take some of that yellow out of these clouds, I can do that. I don't care so much what it's done to the other, the green, but I just don't want it to be quite that golden in these clouds. So I can sort of paint that out and get these clouds back to where it used to be. Okay, let's see here. Let's take the opacity up so that you can maybe see a little bit better of what it's doing here. Okay, and I'm going to do a little bit on her body here too, because I don't love what it's done to some of her. As you can see, it's before and after. You know what? I was on the eraser. I'm so sorry. I should have been on the, now we're cooking. Okay, I'm so sorry. I should have been on brush out, not on eraser. I thought I clicked that, but it must have snapped on me. Okay, so I'm going to brush some of this gold out of these clouds once again. Don't mind the green, but I just don't want that to be super dark gold. Just don't want it to be so gold that it sort of takes away from her. And down here, and I don't have to take it all out, but I just want some of it out. Okay, so I've done that. Now then, I like her skin being a little bit golder, but to me, it kind of looks odd, especially down here. So I'm going to brush some of that out too. I'm going to take the brush size down a little bit. I'm going to take the opacity down to 56% and see what this does. If we can even out that skin tone a little bit. Take that brush size down just a little smaller. I can actually decrease my brush size with my Wacom tablet, which I like, but I can also go over here and just drag it down. Brush out, brush out. Okay. Let's take my opacity back up. It's way down for some reason. Okay, now I can see it's taken some of that yellow out of her skin. I think I'm going to take off some of her face too. I kind of like the golden that it's added to her hair. I think I'm going to leave that alone. But I'm going to take some more of this off of her face. Don't like what it did right around her hairline. That looks a little red right there. Take that out. So as you can see, it's just kind of brushing out some of that color on her skin. Just bringing that skin back to where it was before. Take it out of this hand. I'm just painting some of this yellow out. And as you look down here in this that little area, you can actually see what it's doing. You can actually see where the brush is affecting the image and how it's affecting it. We're just about there. Okay, so I've kind of got that painted out the way I want it. Now then, as I go down here, I can look at, I'm going to look for a little bit of softness. So I think it's in this area. Let's see if it is. There we go. I can look at how this is soft focus 1. I can look at soft focus 2. I can do whichever one that I like. But what I want to do is I want to actually apply this, okay? Okay, now it's applied that filter, or it's applying the filter, I'm sorry, it's at 11%. Now once I say okay, it's going to take me back into Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is apply the filter. So I have the filter applied, and now I want to go down to one of these soft focus. There's the soft focus 2, there's the soft focus 1. I'm going to go ahead, I can't really see the detail of what it's doing, so I'm going to go ahead and choose soft focus 1 and see what that looks like. It's pretty heavy. Let's try soft focus 2 and see what that looks like. Try that again. Okay, I think I like soft focus 1. Now the next thing that I can do, once again, I can do a brush out, and I can brush it out of her eyes, because I want the detail in her eyes. I can brush it off her lips, because I want that detail in her lips. I can even go into her hair and brush it out of her hair a little bit, so that we see a little bit of detail in that hair. I don't want to do too much, just a little. It doesn't have to be brushed out on every single area, but some of it. Okay, so I've got it brushed out on some of those areas a little bit. Now the other thing that I can do, if I think it's too much, I can also go up here to, let me find it, opacity, and I can take the opacity up to make it stronger, or I can take the opacity down. Let's see what it's doing here. That was the original image. Let me take the opacity up. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the opacity of the brush size. Hang on a minute. Let's see. I think it may be... Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do that. We'll do that back in Photoshop because I'm not seeing where I can change that. But let's do the finishing touches. We're going to add a vignette to it. We have the diffusion already added. We can change that if we want to. There it is. That's where I'm trying to find it. I can change the softness. If I want to, I can change what that looks like. Let me zero in her face so you can see what this is doing. Too far. Okay. Well, sorry. Okay, so I can zero in on her face. I can take that softness higher. I can take it lower. Okay, so I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle. Okay, I can take the diffusion up, which is way too much. I can take the diffusion down, which is about right. And then I can do the diffusion transition. I'm going to leave that one alone. But the other thing that I can do, if I want to, is I can create a vignette. And let's say I want to create a vignette, and I want the vignette strength to be I actually want to go this direction, about there, okay? And I can I can make the size bigger or smaller. As you can see, I'm going to also take it to about 50. I like that. I can make the transition different of the vignette. Okay, I like that. And then I can also make the curvature different of the vignette. So there's tons of things you can do with this. So I like that. So the other thing that I can do if I want to, I want my vignette strength to be up just a little bit more. Oh, sorry, I went the wrong way again. Okay, so that's pretty good. Okay, I like that pretty well. The other thing that I could do if I wanted to, if I needed to warm it up, I could go in here and warm it up. I'm not going to do that here. I think it looks great. Okay, so we've done everything that I want to do in Topaz. We've actually gone in and we've softened everything. We have added a little bit of warmth to the dress, to the background. We've added a vignette, and I think I'm good to go. I've applied those things as I've gone along, and so now I'm ready to take it back into Photoshop and take a look at it. And so I'll say OK, and that will immediately send this image back to Photoshop and include everything that we've done in the Topaz. In fact, I think I'm just going to go ahead and change the name of this layer to Topaz layer. And that way, whoops, sorry, that way I'll know which layer was the Topaz layer. And I could even put, if I wanted to, soft, vignette, warm, just so I know what I did to it in Topaz. And so I have my Topaz layer all completed. So if you look at the image before I took it into Topaz, that's what it looked like. After Topaz, that's what it looks like. So you guys, I hope this has been informative. I hope it's helped you a lot. Once again, I really do appreciate your watching, and I would appreciate it if you do decide that you'd like to purchase Topaz, or if you do decide you need a Wacom tablet or Photoshop, if you would use our links, we'd appreciate it. Once again, it's the way that I'm able to keep these tutorials free. And please put in the comments if you enjoyed it and what else you'd like to see, and let me know whether or not it helped or it didn't help or you need something else. Thank you so much, and God bless you, and have a wonderful day.